June 1944, Normandy, France. 2 weeks after D-Day. German reconnaissance planes fly over Allied positions. They photograph what appears to be a massive American armored division. Hundreds of tanks, artillery pieces, supply trucks, an entire army preparing for a major offensive. German commanders study the photos. They redirect 2 full panzer divisions to counter this threat. Thousands of troops, real tanks, real firepower. But here's the thing, that American army doesn't exist. Those tanks are inflatable, made of rubber and canvas. Those artillery pieces are painted wood. Those trucks are just props. The entire army is fake, a deception, an illusion created by artists, sound engineers, and actors pretending to be soldiers. The 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, the Ghost Army. 1,200 men who fought World War II not with bullets, but with creativity. They used inflatable tanks, recorded sound effects, fake radio transmissions, and theatrical performances to fool the German army again and again. They conducted over 20 major deceptions across Europe. They saved thousands of Allied lives. They helped win the war. And for 50 years, their story remained classified. A secret army that never fired a shot but changed history. This is the story of the Ghost Army, the artists who went to war, the most creative military unit ever assembled. Welcome to Archive of Witnesses. Every witness deserves to be remembered, even the ones who fought with rubber tanks and sound effects. The United States is planning the invasion of Europe, the biggest amphibious assault in history. But there's a problem. Not enough troops, not enough equipment, not enough time to build what they need. Someone suggests an alternative. What if we don't need real armies everywhere? What if we can make the Germans think we have armies where we don't? Deception has always been part of warfare. Wooden horses, fake campfires, false flag signals. But this is different. This is deception on an industrial scale. The idea comes from British intelligence. They've been using inflatable decoys to protect airfields, fake planes that draw enemy bombers away from real targets. What if we scale this up? What if we create entire fake armies? The U.S. Army approves the plan. They create a special unit, the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops. Officially, it's a headquarters unit, paperwork and logistics. In reality, it's something else entirely. They start recruiting, but not typical soldiers. They recruit artists, designers from advertising agencies, sound engineers from radio studios, actors, set designers, anyone with creative skills. Many come from art schools, Cooper Union, Pratt Institute, the Philadelphia Museum School. Young men who should be painting or designing are now being trained for military deception. The unit includes future famous artists, fashion designer Bill Blass, painter Ellsworth Kelly, dozens of others who will become successful after the war. But in 1943, they're just young men learning how to fool an army with rubber and paint. The equipment arrives. It's unlike anything any army has ever used. Inflatable tanks, full-size Sherman tank replicas made of rubber. They weigh only 80 pounds. 2 men can carry what appears to be a 30-ton tank. Inflate them with an air compressor, and from 200 yards away, it looks completely real. From the air, it's indistinguishable from an actual tank. Inflatable trucks, inflatable artillery pieces, inflatable jeeps, an entire arsenal made of rubber and canvas. But the visual deception is only part of it. They have sound trucks, vehicles equipped with massive speakers and playback equipment. They record actual sounds of tank movements, troop formations, bridge construction. At night, they play these recordings. The Germans hear what sounds like an armored division moving into position, but it's just sound effects played through speakers hidden in the forest. They have radio operators trained in mimicry. They learn the transmission patterns, call signs, and even personal speech patterns of real units. They generate hundreds of fake radio messages that German intelligence intercepts. The Germans hear an entire division coordinating movements. In reality, it's just a few radio operators in a truck. They even have special units that drive real vehicles in specific patterns at night, creating tracks in the mud that look like hundreds of vehicles have passed through. Every detail matters. The smell of diesel fuel, laundry hanging on lines, the sounds of a camp waking up in the morning. It's not just about looking real. It's about being convincingly real in every way the enemy can detect. The Ghost Army becomes masters of total deception. March 1944. Normandy is months away. The Ghost Army needs a test run. They're sent to support Operation Quicksilver, part of the massive deception plan for D-Day. The goal is to convince the Germans that the invasion will come at Pas de Calais, not Normandy, to make them keep divisions far from the real landing beaches. The Ghost Army sets up fake camps in southeast England, inflatable landing craft in harbors, fake radio traffic suggesting a massive buildup. They succeed. German intelligence reports large Allied forces exactly where the Ghost Army wants them to see forces. But the real test comes after D-Day, in France itself. June 1944. The beachheads are secured, but the push inland is brutal. The Allies need every advantage. The Ghost Army is sent forward, their first combat deception. The real 2nd Armored Division is moving south. The Ghost Army moves north, pretending to be the 2nd Armored. They inflate their tanks at night. By morning, German reconnaissance sees what appears to be a full armored division 50 miles from where the real division actually is. 2 German panzer divisions redirect to counter this threat. Thousands of real German soldiers moving to fight fake American tanks. Meanwhile, the real 2nd Armored faces much lighter resistance. They advance faster, take objectives ahead of schedule, save lives. The Ghost Army's deception worked. The illusion held. But they're just getting started. March 1945. The war is almost over, but Germany is fighting desperately. The Allies need to cross the Rhine River, the last major natural barrier before reaching Germany's industrial heartland. The plan is to cross at Remagen, but the Germans will defend it with everything they have. The Ghost Army gets their mission: make the Germans think the crossing will happen somewhere else. Operation Viersen, the most elaborate deception they've ever attempted. They set up north of the actual crossing point, an entire fake army preparing for an assault. Not just inflatable equipment this time, everything. They create fake supply depots, actual buildings with fake supplies, painted wooden crates that look full of ammunition. They position their inflatable tanks in patterns that match real armored divisions, spacing them correctly, orienting them toward the fake crossing point. The sound trucks play recordings of bridge construction, pile drivers, welding, engineers preparing for a river crossing. Radio operators generate traffic suggesting engineering units, artillery spotters, medical teams, all preparing for a major operation. They even have soldiers put on elaborate theatrical performances in nearby towns, officers dining loudly in restaurants, talking about the upcoming operation within earshot of potential informants. Laundry trucks with 2nd Armored Division markings drive through villages. Soldiers wear different unit patches every day, making it seem like multiple divisions are in the area. Every detail coordinated, every piece of the illusion supporting every other piece. German intelligence reports exactly what the Ghost Army wants them to report: a major crossing planned north of Remagen. The Germans shift forces north, anti-aircraft guns, artillery, infantry reserves. Meanwhile, the real 2nd Armored faces much lighter resistance. Allied forces pour across the Rhine. The deception saved hundreds, possibly thousands of lives. Between operations, the Ghost Army soldiers sketch and paint. They document the war not with guns, but with art. Watercolors of French villages, charcoal drawings of refugees, oil paintings of destroyed cities. Many carry sketchbooks everywhere, drawing between missions, capturing moments other soldiers miss. These aren't combat soldiers documenting horror, they're artists documenting humanity. The faces of French children, the architecture of medieval churches, the landscape of war-torn Europe. One soldier, Arthur Shilstone, paints portraits of local civilians, trading cigarettes for the chance to sketch people's faces, creating a visual record of the human cost of war. Another, Bill Blass, designs camouflage patterns during downtime, applying fashion design principles to military concealment. His work improves the unit's visual deceptions. Ellsworth Kelly, who will become one of America's most famous abstract painters, spends his time drawing architectural details. He's studying form and structure, training his eye in ways that will influence his post-war art. The Ghost Army becomes a traveling art school, men teaching each other techniques, critiquing each other's work, growing as artists while fighting a war. But they're still in danger. They operate close to the front lines. Setting up deceptions means being where the enemy can see them, and the enemy can also shoot them. Several Ghost Army soldiers are killed in action, not in combat, but from artillery strikes while setting up decoys, from snipers who spot them working on inflatable equipment. They're soldiers, just soldiers who carry paintbrushes alongside rifles. The sound deception is its own art form, and it's incredibly dangerous work. The sound trucks weigh several tons, covered in armor plating to protect the equipment and operators. Each truck carries massive speakers and playback equipment. The recordings are precise, not just any tank sounds, specific sounds of specific operations. The sound of a Sherman tank company moving in formation, the particular rumble and rhythm of tracks on different terrain, the sound of bridge construction, pile drivers at exact intervals, the clang of steel on steel, the sound of an artillery battery setting up, trucks arriving, equipment being unloaded, barrels being elevated and adjusted. Each recording played at exactly the right volume. Too quiet and the Germans won't hear it. Too loud and it sounds fake. The sound operators have to position their trucks carefully, using the terrain to carry sound in specific directions, accounting for wind, for humidity, for ambient noise. They play the recordings at night, when sound carries furthest, when the Germans are listening most carefully. One team plays tank sounds from a forest. German intelligence reports American armor assembling in that exact location. Another team plays bridge construction sounds near a river. The Germans position anti-tank guns to cover a crossing that will never happen. The sound operators work in total darkness, no lights, setting up their equipment by field. One mistake and they give away the deception. And they work within German artillery range. If the Germans locate the source of the sounds, they'll show the position. Several sound trucks are destroyed, their operators killed or wounded, but they keep playing their deadly symphony. The Ghost Army doesn't just create fake armies, they become fake armies. When they're impersonating a specific unit, they wear that unit's patches. They paint those markings on their vehicles. They act like members of that unit. If they're pretending to be the 6th Armored Division, they need to know everything about the 6th Armored. The unit's history, its commanders' names, its recent operations. They study real units like actors studying roles, learning mannerisms, speech patterns, even personal habits of specific officers. In French towns, they perform elaborate theater. Officers check into hotels using the names of real commanders from the units they're impersonating. Soldiers deliberately get drunk in bars, talking loudly about upcoming operations, making sure locals overhear, locals who might pass information to German spies. They have fake documents, orders with forged signatures, maps marked with false information, all designed to be accidentally left where they might be found. One soldier loses a briefcase in a cafe. Inside are fake operation orders. The briefcase is recovered, and the information makes its way to German intelligence. They even stage fake accidents. A jeep with specific unit markings crashes near a German position. The Germans investigate and find documents suggesting troop movements. Every interaction is performance. Every conversation is scripted. Every detail supports the illusion. It's exhausting, constantly being someone else, never breaking character. One mistake could expose the entire deception and cost real lives. But they maintain the illusion, day after day, town after town, deception after deception. Not every deception works perfectly, and failure has consequences. Operation Koblenz, September 1944. The Ghost Army is tasked with creating a fake armored division to draw German forces away from the real Allied advance. They set up their equipment as usual: inflatable tanks, sound trucks, radio deceptions. But German reconnaissance is more thorough this time. A patrol gets close enough to spot the deception. They see the inflatable tanks. They realize it's fake. The Germans don't reveal they know. Instead, they use the knowledge. They let the Ghost Army believe the deception is working. They even send fake reports confirming the American armor buildup. Then they ambush a real Allied unit, catching them by surprise because the Ghost Army's deception failed to divert German forces. Several Allied soldiers die. Not Ghost Army members, but real combat troops who relied on the deception to reduce enemy presence. The Ghost Army is devastated. Their failure costs lives, real lives. They analyze what went wrong. The inflatable tanks were positioned too regularly, too perfect. Real units have more randomness. The sound recordings were played at slightly wrong intervals. A trained ear could detect the repetition. They learn. They improve. Their next deception is more sophisticated, more random, more real. But the weight of that failure stays with them. They're not just creating illusions. Real soldiers depend on those illusions. When they fail, people die. It's a burden none of them expected when they enlisted as artists and sound engineers.
April 1945. The war in Europe is nearly over. But Germany is still fighting. The Ghost Army conducts some of their most daring deceptions in these final weeks. Operation Bougainville. The Allies are preparing to cross into Germany itself. The Ghost Army creates an elaborate fake buildup, suggesting a major offensive in one sector. They deploy everything: hundreds of inflatable tanks, dozens of sound trucks, massive radio traffic, fake supply dumps. The deception is so convincing that Allied commanders start to believe it themselves. Officers from other units called to coordinate with the fake armored division. The Ghost Army has to carefully redirect these inquiries without revealing the deception. German forces concentrate against the fake threat: artillery, anti-tank positions, reserves. The real Allied attack comes from a different direction, meeting minimal resistance, advancing deep into German territory. Operation Viersen had saved hundreds of lives. Operation Bougainville saves thousands. By late April, German forces are collapsing. The end is near. The Ghost Army conducts one last deception: a fake armored thrust toward Berlin, designed to confuse German defenses in their final days. It barely matters. The Wehrmacht is falling apart, but the Ghost Army maintains their deception until the very end. May 8th, 1945. Victory in Europe. The war is over. The Ghost Army has conducted over 20 major tactical deceptions. They've impersonated dozens of different units. They've saved countless Allied lives, and almost nobody knows they existed. When the war ends, the Ghost Army is disbanded. The men go home. They're ordered never to speak about their service. Everything they did is classified, top secret. For 50 years, they keep the secret. They return to civilian life. Bill Blass becomes a world-famous fashion designer. He never mentions the Ghost Army. Ellsworth Kelly becomes one of America's most celebrated abstract painters. His war service remains unknown. Arthur Shilstone becomes a successful illustrator. His sketches from the war stay in a closet for decades. They attend veterans' reunions, listen to other soldiers tell combat stories, and they say nothing because their war was classified. Their families don't know. Their friends don't know. The world doesn't know. Occasionally, they meet each other, former Ghost Army members crossing paths in civilian life. They share knowing glances, but don't discuss their shared secret. The military keeps the Ghost Army classified long after World War II ends. The techniques might be useful in future conflicts. The illusions might work again. Gradually, some information leaks out. Brief mentions in military histories, footnotes in academic papers. But the full story remains hidden. Finally, in 1996, the military declassifies the Ghost Army, 51 years after the war ended. The veterans, now in their elderly, can finally tell their story. They begin giving interviews, sharing their sketches and paintings, publishing memoirs. The world learns about the inflatable tanks, the sound trucks, the elaborate deceptions that saved thousands of lives. And people are amazed. This happened? Artists fought the war with creativity instead of weapons? But for the Ghost Army veterans, it's bittersweet. So many of their friends never lived to see the story told, died with the secret still kept. Today, the Ghost Army is recognized as one of the most innovative military units in history. Military academies study their tactics, deception warfare, psychological operations, information warfare. The principles they pioneered are still used. Modern militaries employ decoys, fake radio traffic, and elaborate deceptions. But it's more than just military tactics. The Ghost Army proved something important, that creativity is a weapon, that artists and engineers can contribute to warfare in ways nobody expected. They saved lives not by taking them, but by preventing battles, by making the enemy waste resources on fate threats. Their art from the war has been exhibited in museums. The sketches and paintings created between operations, a visual record of World War II from a unique perspective. In 2013, Congress awarded the Ghost Army the Congressional Gold Medal, the highest civilian honor in the United States. The surviving veterans attended the ceremony, now in their 90s, finally receiving recognition for the war they fought with inflatable tanks and sound effects. Some of their equipment survives, a few inflatable tanks, preserved in museums, physical evidence of impossible warfare. In 2022, a documentary film told their story to a new generation, people amazed that this actually happened. The Ghost Army represents something important. In a war known for industrial slaughter, here was a unit that used ingenuity instead of firepower. They remind us that there are different kinds of courage, different ways to serve, different ways to save lives. World War II was the most destructive conflict in human history. Over 70 million people died. In the midst of that destruction, 1,200 artists and engineers fought a different kind of war. They didn't kill the enemy, they confused them. They didn't destroy resources. They wasted enemy resources on threats that didn't exist. The Ghost Army conducted over 20 major tactical deceptions. Every successful deception meant Allied soldiers faced lighter resistance, fewer casualties, more lives saved. How many lives did they save? Certainly thousands, possibly tens of thousands. They did it with inflatable tanks that weighed 80 pounds, with recorded sound effects played through speakers, with fake radio messages and theatrical performances. It sounds absurd. Rubber tanks fooling German intelligence? Sound effects convincing trained soldiers? But it worked, again and again. Because the Ghost Army understood something fundamental about warfare. Wars aren't just fought with weapons. They're fought with information, with perception, with psychology. And the Ghost Army mastered all of these. For 50 years, their story remained secret. A classified chapter of World War II that almost nobody knew existed. Now we know, and their legacy lives on, not just in military tactics, but in proving that creativity can change history. This is why Archive of Witnesses exists, to preserve these incredible stories, the ones that sound impossible but happened. The ones that show us new ways of understanding history. The Ghost Army fought with art supplies and imagination, and they helped win the war. If this story amazed you, subscribe to Archive of Witnesses. We bring you untold stories from World War II, Cold War espionage, and ancient warriors, the accounts that redefine what courage and ingenuity mean. Hit the notification bell, and in the comments, tell us what you think. Would you have wanted to serve in the Ghost Army? Could creativity be more powerful than weapons? Share this story, because the artists who went to war with rubber tanks deserve to be remembered. Until next time, remember this. History is written by those brave enough to live it, and sometimes by those creative enough to rewrite it. This is Archive of Witnesses.